All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Connected North session playlists with Mitch Holmes. So I'm going to let Mitch introduce himself in a minute, but I will begin by saying he is joining us from beautiful Toronto today, but we have our own gorgeous weather that we can kind of brag about here in Northwestern Ontario. So even though we are 22 hours apart, we are acknowledging the beautiful land and weather that we are enjoying on Treaty 3 territory today for both of our schools. Mitch is a musician by trade, began playing the guitar when he was young, but today he's going to bring you some information about playlists and how they can connect to the Barren grounds, our book that we're reading across school board. So Mitch, we have almost 350 students reading the Barren grounds. It was a Canadian youth hit, and so we brought it to KP. So all these students you see on the camera are reading that great book right now. So I'll pass it over to you and wish all of our students and our two staff today a good hour of learning.
Great, thanks, Michelle. So I'm just going to introduce myself in my language, which is Ganyageha or Mohawk. So Sego Sewokwego, Mitch Young Yats Tukaranto Nidawaganun, Ganyakahaga Niwagat Wanjora, Anawal Niwagita Lot. So my name is Mitch. I'm located here in Toronto. I'm Mohawk and I sit with the Turtle Clan. So today we're going to talk about creating a playlist. I'm going to share a slideshow in a little bit and just go over some general tips and tricks, where to get started, how to get started, how to think about playlists, what goes into them, song choice, genre selection, all those things, and hopefully give you a good starting point to start creating your playlist. And so I'm going to share my screen now. And while I'm doing that, have any of you guys made a playlist before? You can just wave your hand in the air. Yeah, some of you? Okay, perfect. Perfect. So this won't be new to you, but hopefully I can share some things, some helpful tips and tricks about creating a playlist. So by now you should be able to see my playlist creation slideshow. And I'm going to ask another question. How many of you guys have a favorite musician or band that you listen to all the time? Awesome. Okay, so now I'm sure when you got this project, you were like, where do I begin with this? What starting point do I need? How do I organize my thoughts? How do I even go about this project? So first of all, raise your hand if you guys have read, half of the Barren Grounds. Are you halfway through it now? Okay, perfect. So, when you've read half the Barren Grounds now, maybe by the time you finish the playlist, you'll have read it all. One important question to ask yourself is, pulling out themes in your favorite moments from the book. So, what was some of your favorite parts of the book? Are there sections that made you feel sad, sections that made you feel happy? Really, really dig deep into how the book has made you feel. And you can relate that back to the songs. The next thing you want to ask yourself is, how do you want to organize your playlist? Do you want it to be based off chapters? Do you want to pick out 10 different moments from the book and go off of that? How many songs do you want to have on it? If you want to make like a 10-song playlist, a 20-song playlist, maybe you want it to be longer. It's totally up to you. And then another question you need to ask is, will you stick to one genre of music? How many of you guys have a Spotify account or have gone on Spotify before? Yeah, so Spotify has a lot of different playlists that they create every week. They have a weekly playlist. If you listen to about 10, great. So if you listen to music on Spotify a lot, they'll create a playlist for you based off of what you listen to, which are always fun to check out. But you'll see there's also ones that are specifically one genre. Sometimes there's like a cafe jazz one. There's acoustic songwriting playlist. There's all these playlists based off of one genre of music or one type of feeling. There's studying playlists, which usually are like relaxing music with no lyrics and, not too heavy. So there's lots of different playlists and they're all different. For me, I listen to playlists when I run, when I'm cooking dinner, when I'm driving, and I've made playlists for all different types of things. I've made a running playlist, I've made a playlist for songs that my grandpa liked. I've made a playlist for songs that my grandma liked, that I play sometimes when I'm doing different things that maybe are a little slower. So, and those aren't one genre of music. Those are just all sorts of different music, but they flow together nicely because of the way that I've arranged them. So we'll talk about that as well. And again, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. I'll answer them as they come up. And so talking about themes and favorite moments from the book, at the end of the slideshow here, I'm going to talk about a playlist that I made based off of my favorite book. And I'll talk to you about my song choice and why I chose certain songs over other songs. And so what I like to do when I'm thinking about a playlist, especially when I'm thinking about relating it back to someone, I kind of do like a brain dump. I write out my favorite moments from the book. I pull out themes, feelings like in the book that I read, there's lots of parts that made me sad. There's parts that made me anxious about what was to come next. There's parts that made me angry. There's parts that made me feel relaxed. The author that I'm reading is very descriptive, and sometimes he'll spend like 2 pages talking about what the sun looked like, or the way the horse galloped in the desert and things like that. So, there's relaxing parts like that where you can kind of really visualize what is happening in the novel. So writing down those parts, writing down the sad parts, writing down the happy parts, writing all those down on a piece of paper so you get them out of your head and onto paper so you can come back and look at that and say, I need to find a song that fits with, the sad part or the happy part. And song choice doesn't have to be literal. So if there's a happy moment in the book, you don't have to choose, Pharrell Williams' song Happy. You can if you want, but it doesn't need to be that literal. If it makes you feel a certain way, then you can choose whatever song you like. If there's a song that makes me feel happy, but it might make one of you guys feel sad, that's okay. You can still choose that song. It's how you feel about the song, not how anybody else feels about the song. So really lean into that. Lean into how you feel about the song and how the book has made you feel. Don't let other people dictate how you should feel. Oftentimes there's a lot of reviews online and things like that about movies and books and music, and that's exactly what they're their opinion pieces. It's how they felt about it. It's not how you should feel about something. So there's something called active listening. Have any of you guys ever heard of active listening? I saw a couple hands go up. So active listening is the act of, when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're really interested in what they're saying, and there's no distractions, that's active listening. So when you do that with music, when you're actively listening to music, you're not on your phone, you're not doing homework, you're really just sitting there and taking the music in and really listening and absorbing what's going on. So when I active listen, for instance, I try to do it every so often during the day. I'll pick out, the bass line, and I'll listen to that really closely, or I'll listen to the drums really closely, or listen to the lyrics really closely. Because, we live in a fast-paced world where oftentimes music is in the background. And so we're not getting the full effect of the music, what that musician intended. So to really feel the music and feel their intent behind it, it's good to actively listen and kind of take out the distractions. So when you're making your playlist, remember that, when you go back to listen to the songs, actively listen to it. Walking to school, or just sitting in your room, just actively listen and see if that's actually how you feel about the song. And so when it comes to organizing your playlist, there's a bunch of different ways you can go. So you need to ask yourself that question. How do you want to organize your playlist? What do you want it to look like when you're done? Do you want it to follow the chapters? So if your book has 10 chapters, do you want 10 songs? If your book has 20 chapters, do you want 20 songs? Do you want it to follow a specific theme? So do you want to pull out happy moments from the book? Do you want to pull out sad moments from the book? Do you want it to be a mix of all your emotions from the book? You can choose your favorite parts of the book. Some might be happy, some might be sad. In my book, some of my favorite moments are the moments that were typically sad because it meant that something was coming. The main character was going to do something, to react to that sadness. And then another important part of playlists is all about how you organize your songs. So you can either do that at the beginning. You can start with the first song, or you can just kind of do like a brain dump, a song dump, and just throw all your songs in a playlist. And then as you go back and listen to them, you can organize them based on how you think they flow together. So if you guys have listened to playlists before, oftentimes, the person has taken into account how a song flows into the next song. Oftentimes, they won't go slow song, slow song, slow song, slow song. They'll mix it up a bit. They'll go slow song, medium tempo song, a very up tempo song, back down to medium tempo, back down to slow song. So that when you're listening to it, your system isn't jarred by having to go from a slow song, quiet song. It's like a heavy metal song. So there's a flow to playlists, and when you create them, really keep that in mind, because when you're reading a book, there's flow, right? There's ebbs and flows to books, just like there's ebbs and flows in music. So, jot down your points about organizing and how you think you want the playlist to sound. Is there any questions before I move on to the next slide? No? Okay. So song selection. So when we talk about song selection, some of you put up your hand, you have a favorite musician or band. Maybe they have a few different CDs out. Maybe they have a huge collection of songs. Maybe you just want to choose music from them. That's totally okay. There's a lot of playlists out there that are just one band songs. And then, do you only want to use one band songs? That's totally okay too. Oftentimes, some playlists will have, if they have a huge category of music, like Led Zeppelin or the Beatles, people will throw together just their number one hits and make that a playlist. So, if there's a band that you really like and, these songs remind you of the book, by all means, you can use just the same artist for that. And then going back to organizing, how many songs are you going to choose? Based off song title, that example I gave of the Happy song by Pharrell Williams. On my playlist, I have a song called Mexican Cowboy, because in the book, the main character gets called a vaquero, which is a Mexican cowboy. And it's kind of this huge moment for him where somebody sees him for what he thinks he is. He's always wanted to be a cowboy, and finally people are recognizing him as such. And then based off feeling, music has this power to make you feel a certain way. Music is also very memory based. For instance, for me, there's certain songs that I can listen to where, I can put myself back in that exact moment when I first heard that song. There's a band called The Roots, who you might see on the Jimmy Fallon show. There's an album of theirs that I can listen to, and I can remember the exact feeling of walking to work. It's a summer, it's hot out, it's 9 a.m. And I can see the road I'm walking down so clearly. So, really, really play into those feelings that you get when you listen to music or when you read the book. And you can use that to your advantage when it comes to the playlist. And so when we talk about genre of music, like I mentioned with Spotify playlists, sometimes there's one genre, with, like cafe jazz or, acoustic songwriting. But sometimes there's multiple genres. In my playlist, for instance, there's multiple genres, but they're all the same kind of tempo of song. They're all a little bit slower. None of them are too up tempo. And of course, there's pros and cons to both. When I'm running, I don't want to listen to a playlist that is really slow, or goes from like a really up tempo song that's kind of making me run a little bit faster right into a slow song. That's gonna, shock my system a little bit and make me feel a little bit abrupt, and maybe I'll start slowing down. So there's definitely pros and cons, but again, it's your playlist. So whatever you guys fits with how you want this playlist to look at the end of it is good with, it's up to you guys. And so, when we talk about feeling and genre, we talked about opinions before about music. It's up to you. You guys are the ones that get to dictate how you feel about a song and how you feel about a genre. For instance, when I was in high school, I listened to a lot of metal music, and the automatic thing is that people think you're angry, when you listen to like heavier music. But for me, that wasn't the case. There's a lot of those songs that, made me feel sad, or they helped with my anxiety, or they put my mind at ease. Just because they were loud and kind of in your face didn't mean that I was angry. And so you can use that to your advantage. If when you hand in your playlist and your teacher's looking at it, as long as you can tell them, where it relates to in the book and why you decide to choose that song, that's great. That's the most important thing, as long as you can talk about, why you decided to choose that song. And so just some general tips and tricks for creating a playlist. Find your starting point. We talked about writing down all your thoughts and writing down, all your feelings and the themes, and kind of just giving yourself a good point to jump off of, a good starting point to get the ball rolling. And then you need to ask yourself, how do you want people to listen to your playlist? So if you're done the book, you're done the playlist, say in a year's time, somebody comes across your playlist. Do you want them to shuffle through the playlist, or do you want them to listen to it front to back? How many of you guys turn on your phone and your music and you just hit shuffle and just let the songs play through? Yeah, that's a common thing to do nowadays, that we have music is kind of more leaning towards singles now than it is full albums. people tend to listen to one song by an artist and then jump to another song by an artist. And so when you're making your playlist, you need to decide for it. Do you want people to listen straight through, or do you want them to be able to shuffle it and it still kind of have the same feel and vibe? So once you figure that out, you can go into choosing your favorite songs. If you have a favorite song, if you have a collection of favorite songs, and you can relate them back to the novel, that's great. You can use those. And then you need to ask yourself, what's your end goal when someone listens to it? How do you want that person to feel? Do you want them to be happy? Do you want them to feel sad? Do you want them, when they're done listening to your playlist, where do you want them to be at? If somebody was just to randomly come across your playlist on Spotify, for me with my playlist, the book didn't end on a happy note. It was kind of a sad note. It didn't turn out the way that he wanted it to. And it wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't supposed to be. And so in my playlist, I ended off with a really sad song, a song that I think is really sad and kind of just really, hits deep, if I may. And so you need to ask yourself, how do you want that listener to be left if they're actively listening to your playlist? And then you need to ask yourself, what scenario would you find yourself listening to it? Would you want to be listening to it while you do homework? Do you want to listen to it while you're walking, while you're cooking? There's so many different variables that can come into play when you're talking about a playlist and listening to a playlist. Are you going to be actively listening to it? Do you want it to be on in the background? If you want it to be on while you're studying, you might choose music that has no lyrics, and that's totally okay. In the last session we ran, we talked about the difference between soundtracks and playlists. So one important thing you can do is really start to use that visualization. When you guys are reading a book, how many of you can picture, in your head what the characters look like, what the landscape looks like? Just raise your hands if you kind of get that feeling when you're reading through a book. Some of you, okay. So use that to your advantage when you're reading a book. Picture that scene in your mind. Close your eyes if you have to, and think about what song will be playing in the background if it was a movie. What would be happening? Would there be a big triumphant song, a really high energy song? Would it be a slow song? Think about that when you watch a movie. For instance, when you watch something like, how many of you have seen Lord of the Rings? A couple people. How many of you have seen like Batman, like The Dark Knight Rises? A few more people. Okay, so those movies, those are soundtracks. Those are created by a guy named Hans Zimmer, who's probably one of the most famous composers. And so what he's doing is he's sitting at a big desk, in a recording studio. He has a bunch of virtual instruments, likely Pro Tools or something like that. And he's watching the movie in front of him. And as he's watching it, he takes notes, how this scene made him feel. And then he starts building up the music. So he might say, oh, this is like in Lord of the Rings, for instance, this is the battle scene. So it needs to be really energetic and high energy and climactic. So he might sit there and compose based off how he's feeling in that particular scene. And then he shows the director and the producer, and they might come back and say, you know what, we don't want it to be that energetic. We want to save that for the very end of the scene. So it's similar to a playlist, but different in some ways as well. So you can look at it as a soundtrack to the novel, a soundtrack to your favorite moments in the novel. If there's a scene where they're walking, they're traversing this great terrain and trying to get somewhere, you can choose a song that fits with that. Or you can go the playlist route and choose a song that fits with the feeling in that moment. So there's lots of different avenues you can take when you're making your playlist. Do you want it to be more soundtracky, or do you want it to be more like a playlist? If you watch a lot of like indie movies or Marvel movies, oftentimes they'll use songs at specific moments, like the intro of Guardians of the Galaxy. Who has seen that movie? Some of you. And there's a scene where Chris Pratt is walking around and he's listening to Come and Get Your Love. And that song is written by an indigenous band. And so that's really cool. I think that scene is great. And it shows the power of having, a really popular song play in a movie. That movie doesn't have technically a soundtrack that was created just for it. It has a playlist that goes along with the movie. And there's lots of movies that do that. There's movies where you'll hear a popular song when they're sitting talking in a cafe, or if they're, walking around a shopping center, things like that. So when you have your playlist, you can look at it that way as well. In this moment, what song is playing in the background? So you can, there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. There's certainly no wrong way to make a playlist. It's your playlist. Whatever you think fits with your goals of the playlist, then that's right. And so I'm going to talk about my playlist now, and go over why I chose some of the songs that I chose. So the book that I read was called The Crossing by Cormac McCarthy. It's a big book. It's like 500 pages. I've read it a few times though, so it's pretty easy to make this playlist. But when I did this, I was like, I'm going to make a short playlist, something small, not too many songs. And I kind of wanted to go based off my feelings. And then there's a few moments where I want to make them literal. I want them to really be, really get the meaning behind the song, like Mexican Cowboy, for instance, this one by Willie Watson. So this one is a pretty literal meaning of when he gets called a cowboy by someone that he meets. And so the first song, Meet Me at the Creek, this takes place at the beginning of the novel, when he's with his brother at the creek on their farm, and they bump into somebody who shouldn't be there, who ends up changing the course of the entire story. And so it's a huge moment in the book. And so this song is, it's like a 5-minute long song. It starts off slow and then it builds up into pretty intense. And then it comes right back down. And then the next song is called Into the Sun. And I mentioned that Cormac McCarthy, the way he writes is very descriptive. So he'll write 2 pages on what the sun looked like or how the sun felt shining down on him while he was riding his horse. And this one I was thinking, if there is a movie and, he's in New Mexico and he's riding his horse in the desert, this song will be playing in the background. Big theatrical thing where this song is really loud. He's slowly riding across the desert. This was a song that I thought would fit there. The next song is a little more up-tempo. I chose this one because it's called Love Remains, and I kind of related back to his relationship with his mom. And then also because when I was actively listening to the song, I really liked the bass line to it. And so there's a scene in there where he describes how the horse is galloping, and I kind of liken that to the bass line of this song. And then the next song is a really slow song. It's called In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning. It's very soft. It's something that, if you put it on in the morning, you could just relax to it. And there's a lot of scenes where he's waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning and setting out on his horse onto the next journey. And so I thought that was a fitting song. If it was a movie, this is what would be playing in the background. And then the next song is more up tempo, definitely a lot louder than the previous song, but it flows into it nicely. And then, for instance, Mexican Cowboy, I mentioned that one is about him being called a cowboy. Mama Said, the acoustic version, that's about something his mom had said to him before he set out on his journey. And he's able to kind of, what she says is always in his ear. He's constantly hearing that be repeated by his mom, and the overarching theme is that if he had listened to what she had said, things would have turned out differently. His journey would have turned out differently. And so that's why I chose that one, because it fits really nicely with that theme of how I felt as his mom kept being brought up. And then I mentioned I closed it off with a really sad song. So this one's called Leave It by the Sea, and I think it's a really sad song. It makes me feel sad when I listen to it. And that fits with how I felt when I was done reading the book. It was a sad book. There was no happy ending to it. Certainly wasn't the Disney ending. It didn't end with a big triumphant return or anything like that. It was very anticlimactic. So I felt that this song kind of fit with that really well. And that's kind of what I want the listener to, whoever's listening, is to feel, is like, okay, not everything has a happy ending. This is kind of the way this book goes. And so when you guys are creating your playlist, lean into all of that. Write down your thoughts, write down your feelings about the book. If you have a playlist that you like already and there's songs on there that you like, write down your thoughts and feelings about the songs and then cross-reference them with the ones that are from the novel. And so the most important thing, again, is organization. How do you want to organize your playlist? What do you want the listener to feel? How do you want the listener to engage with the playlist? Do you want it to all be one genre? So like I said, these are all not the same genre. Mexican Cowboy is a folk song. Somewhere along the way is kind of a indie rock song. In the Wee Small Hours of Morning is a straight up jazz song. Meet Me at the Creek is a folk song. It's mostly a banjo playing. And then William Prince is an indigenous musician. And this is kind of folkier acoustic singer-songwriter stuff. So not all the same genre, but they all still fit together nicely. They'll flow into each other nicely. They'll fit together. And so that's your end goal, is, relating it back to the book and getting the songs to all fit together and flow together nicely. And so does anyone have any questions about playlists or music in general? And also another tip is Google is your friend. There's a lot of, if you're looking for a specific song, if you want to look at different folk songs, you can Google a list of folk songs. If there's a social justice theme, you can Google that. There's lots of different things you can Google. There's lots of playlists on Spotify that you can go and listen to get inspiration for your own playlist. Okay, I see a question in the chat. Okay, if you want to make a playlist that is medium level, but you can't think of a song or can't find a song, how do you find a good song for your playlist? So what you can do here is you can go on Spotify and you can look at the playlist section. And so let me see if I can actually share my screen. I'll show you on Spotify. Okay, just one second. Okay, so you should be able to see. Just raise your hand if you can see my Spotify here. Yeah, okay. So what you can do is you can go into here at the bottom. So these are my playlists here that I've made. You can see there's a few of them. But what you can do is you can go up here. So say you want to listen, so you want the genre of music. Say you want folk. And then you can go to the genre folk and acoustic. And it brings up this whole huge list of different folk things. So these are all playlists right here. So there's like a happy folk songs.
Hey, Mitch.
Yeah.
We can't see your Spotify screen. We're still on your Google Slides.
Okay, one second.
Okay.
Okay, you should be able to see that now.
We can, thank you. Do you want to start over with what you were showing us?
I'll go to the home section here. So when you open Spotify and you have account, it lists all the stuff here. How many of you guys have a Spotify account that you listen to music on? Okay, some of you. So you're familiar with this. So you know that Spotify does like your top songs of 2020. It does your recently played, uniquely yours. This is the cool section here. Time capsule goes through songs that you've listened to over the past year or so. And then if you're looking for medium tempo songs and you know the genre is folk, you can just type in folk, and the top result, it actually has a genre listing for folk. So when you're in folk, these are popular playlists. You can go through and look at, acoustics covers, happy folk, classic acoustic, sea shanties. I don't really know what that is, but that's a thing. And then these are popular albums in folk. So you can actually go and listen to different songs in here. But you can also go see more. And this will bring up even more. So this is chill folk songs. This is things you would hear in a cafe. So if you're looking for medium tempo folk songs, you could do the folk rock favorites. You're likely to find medium tempo songs in there. You can do chill singer-songwriter. So there's lots of options on Spotify for learning about different songs and genres. But definitely check this out. Just go through. There's lots you can do on Spotify. You can search up different genres. Here's a blues classics playlist that somebody put together. And there's literally so many songs on here. So if there's any genre that you're unaware of, or you want to have a song from there in your playlist, you can just search it up, playlist, and hit see all. Jazz classics, jazz in the background. This will be good if you want to do one where you can study and listen to your playlist, jazzy dinner, things like that. So there's lots of different routes you can go through. Spotify has a lot of options for searching through playlists. So definitely use this as a resource if you're unsure of where to start and you just want to explore some songs. Any other questions? Can you search by beats per minute for running? I don't know if you can search by beats per minute, but they do have playlists for beats per minute. So like, for instance, if you wanted to, let's see if we can. Yeah, well, if you don't have access to Spotify, you can just use Google. There's lots of people that put playlists on there, or YouTube, for instance. You can use YouTube to come up with playlists. You can make a playlist on YouTube based off videos you find on there. All you have to do is have a Google account, so Gmail, and you can log into YouTube. Sometimes there's albums that were put out, in the early 2000s that aren't on Spotify. They're not on Apple Music. I don't own the CD, but somebody has put together a playlist of the songs on YouTube. So yeah, use YouTube as well. There's lots of playlists on there. Oftentimes they're just not as smooth as a Spotify playlist because sometimes there's ads, and it has to reload the next page as it goes through the songs. Any other questions? Those are great questions, by the way.
Any other student questions? I'll move around. Miss Shears in Ear Falls. Hi, you guys. How's everything going today? It's great.
Going really good.
Have you guys started to think about some songs for some of the events in this book, or the characters, anything like that?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Anybody have one they want to share?
Go ahead, just say it loud.
I don't know, Soldier Poet King by the Overlows.
What was it?
Soldier Poet King by the Overlows.
I'm not familiar with it. Can you put that in the chat so we can check it out after?
Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. I hope to. We're hoping to put all these songs together. If you share the Google form with your students, we'll put them maybe in order by chapter or by theme. We'll figure out a way to organize them. That's great. Thanks, you guys. Miss Everett's class, neighbors, Miss Shears, how are you guys doing today?
We're doing well.
Any music, am I going to say the word right? Aficionados? Is that what it is?
No. Yes. Any ideas so far?
I'm not coaches are music. I'm
Has anybody thought about that? Oh, I don't, you know what? I'm not going to say because I'm not sure if everybody's at that spot in the book. Zip. But I would say a great song or a great event in the book, which I know you're all at, would be when they do go through the portal into the Barren grounds. A very haunting, mysterious song, maybe with some loon call kind of noises in the background to show the desolation. Okay, thank you, Ms. Shears' class. All right, let's move to Ms. Grant. How are you guys at Red Lake Madsen?
great.
Any songs coming up as ideas yet?
I've kind of asked them that. They're not too sure just yet.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't really talked too much about this project.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this has created some ideas, whether they're going to choose to make a playlist off of a character or a particular theme, or We'll see what they come up with in the end.
I'm looking
Definitive questions right now, or song ideas that are lyric appropriate.
right.
All
I
right.
don't have anything to.
Thank you. And Miss Fothrop, I know you guys have started to touch on this and are pulling together some music. Do you have any advice? Do you or your students have any advice for the other classes as they get started?
Just have fun with it.
Just have fun with it, they say. And we won't share any specific titles because we're keeping that like top secret at the moment. But there's some that are thinking like, oh, what would Morgan listen to? And making some playlists based on what they think the character would listen to, as well as songs that might represent them.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've got some good things going on here, but we will share later.
I love it. Well, Mitch, we'll let you close with any final words for the kids as they start to dig into their playlists.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I noticed you mentioned a specific spot in the book that was kind of haunting. You can just search that keyword on Spotify, and you can come up with all these playlists that people have made with haunting songs. So use your imagination. Google is your friend. Spotify. The search bars are really intuitive, so you can just type in how are you feeling and playlist afterwards, and it should show up. So have fun with it. There's no right or wrong song as long as it's appropriate. So yeah, just have fun with it. I had a lot of fun making my playlist. Something I'll probably continue listening to for a long time. So thanks for having me today.
Grade 6s, 7s, and 8s, would you give a wave of thank you to Mitch? If you're in the chat, feel free to add to it. We look forward to everybody sharing their playlists, and thanks everybody for joining today. We'll see you, I think Monday is our next time we're going to pull together, but thanks Mitch so much for joining KPDSB as well today. Just second out of 3 sessions.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great.
It was. All right, bye everyone.
Take care.